Nathan had always been the one everyone could count on, loyal, gentle, and honest to the core. But that morning at Heartland, something in his eyes had changed. There was a quiet storm behind his calm smile, a weight he carried that no one else could see. No one knew that by the end of the day, Nathan would do something that would shake the entire ranch to its heart. The sun rose softly over the hills of Heartland. Dew shimmered on the grass, and the horses stirred in their stalls, their breath misting in the cool air. Amy was already outside, her hands brushing through a horse's mane, her mind at peace. Jack sat on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the ranch wake up the way he always had. It was a picture of calm, of routine, of everything that made Heartland feel like home. But peace, as always, has a way of slipping away when you least expect it. Nathan walked out of the barn, his boots crunching on the gravel. His shoulders looked heavier than usual, though his face hid it well. He paused for a moment, looking at the horizon, where the sun was just starting to climb. His phone buzzed in his pocket, sharp and sudden in the morning quiet. He hesitated before pulling it out. The screen showed a name that froze him in place. He stepped away from the others and answered, his voice low. "Yeah, I didn't think I'd hear from you again." There was a pause. His jaw tightened as he listened. Whatever he was hearing wasn't good. The calmness of his voice didn't match the fear in his eyes. He ended the call without another word, staring at the phone as if it had betrayed him. Then he slipped it back into his pocket and walked to the stables, head down. Lost in thought, Amy noticed it right away. She called out to him, but he only gave a half smile and said, "Just a busy morning. That's all." Then he turned back to the horses. Amy frowned, sensing there was more to it, but decided not to push. She'd learned at Heartland that sometimes people needed space to face their own storms. Inside the barn, Nathan brushed his horse with slow, distracted strokes. His mind was far from Heartland. The voice on the phone echoed in his ears, a reminder of a secret he had tried to bury. It was coming back now, threatening everything he had built, everything he loved. He looked at his horse, the only one who seemed to understand without judgment. "Looks like it's time," he whispered. Outside, the day went on as usual. The ranch was alive with movement and laughter, unaware that something had already shifted. Nathan watched from a distance, knowing what was coming. He didn't want to do it. He didn't want to be the cause of pain. But he knew he had no choice. Sometimes protecting the people you love means breaking their hearts. The sky over Heartland began to shift. What had been bright and clear only hours ago now carried the weight of dark clouds slowly gathering on the horizon. Nathan could feel it in his chest, a storm that wasn't just in the sky but deep inside him. Every sound seemed sharper, every breath heavier. The ranch felt different now, even though nothing had changed. The same fences stood, the same horses neighed in their stalls. But to Nathan, everything suddenly felt fragile, like one wrong move could break it all. He tried to lose himself in the day's work. He fixed the latch on the old gate, carried hay bales to the barn, and checked on the horses one by one. But every time he paused, his mind dragged him back to the phone call. The words still echoed, impossible to escape. "If you don't handle this, they'll find out everything." He could still hear that cold voice, the one that had followed him for months before finally disappearing. He had hoped the past was buried, that he'd finally left it behind. But it had found him again. By mid-afternoon, Amy found him standing near the corral, staring out at the open fields. She called his name, her voice full of concern. "Nathan, what's going on? You've been quiet all day." He turned toward her, his face calm but distant. "Just tired," he said. She stepped closer, her eyes searching his. "This isn't just about being tired. I know that look, Nathan. What's wrong?" For a moment, he thought about telling her everything, the truth, the secret, the reason he hadn't slept for nights. But the thought of Amy's face changing, of her trust breaking, stopped him. He shook his head and forced a small smile. "It's nothing, Amy, really." She didn't believe him, but she let it go, at least for now. As she walked away, Nathan felt the weight of guilt press harder on his chest. He wished he could be honest. He wished he could tell her that someone had been threatening to expose something that could destroy Heartland's name, something that involved him and a choice he'd made years ago to protect someone he loved. He had promised himself it would never come to this. That evening, Jack noticed too. He had seen men hide their pain before, and he could recognize it anywhere. He stopped Nathan near the barn. "You're walking like a man with too much on his mind," Jack said quietly. Nathan gave a small laugh that didn't sound real. "Maybe I am." Jack placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Whatever it is, son, don't carry it alone. Secrets grow heavy when they stay quiet." Nathan nodded, but his eyes stayed on the ground. "I know, Jack. I just need to figure it out first." Jack gave him a long look before walking away, leaving Nathan standing there under the fading light. The sky was now dark gray, the wind colder. Nathan knew what he had to do, but that didn't make it easier as the last bit of sunlight disappeared behind the hills. He whispered to himself, "If this is the only way to save them, then I'll do it." He didn't know yet what the cost would be, only that it would be high. And when the storm finally broke, Heartland would never be the same again. Night came fast over Heartland, the kind of night that felt too quiet, as if the land itself was holding its breath. The barn lights glowed faintly against the dark, and Nathan stood inside, motionless, surrounded by the scent of hay and leather. His horse shifted restlessly, sensing the unease in its rider. Nathan ran a hand down the animal's neck, his thoughts racing faster than his heartbeat. He had spent the whole day fighting against one truth, that he could no longer protect everyone by staying silent. The time for hesitation was gone. He opened his locker and pulled out a worn leather satchel. Inside were a few old documents, a folded photograph, and a single letter sealed in brown paper. That letter had been sitting there for months, waiting for this exact moment. It wasn't meant for him, it was meant for Amy. She would read it only after he was gone. His hands trembled slightly as he looked at it, then closed the bag and tied it shut. The sound of the rope tightening echoed in the stillness of the barn. The phone call had made everything clear. The person on the other end hadn't given him a choice. Either Nathan confessed to a deal gone wrong, one that would ruin Heartland's reputation, or he would watch the family he loved lose everything. It had all started years ago when he made a decision out of desperation, taking blame for something that wasn't entirely his fault. Now the past had caught up. The unthinkable thing wasn't running away. It was what he planned to do next, to take the fall again, one last time, to save everyone else. He walked out of the barn into the cold night air. The sky was thick with clouds, heavy and low, the wind whispering through the fields. In the distance, the lights of the ranch house glowed warm and safe. He watched them for a long time, memorizing the way the windows flickered, the way the porch light swung gently in the breeze. This was home. And yet, it no longer felt like it belonged to him. Inside the house, Amy sat by the window, unaware that Nathan was outside looking in. Her face was soft under the lamplight, her eyes heavy with worry. She still didn't know what was coming. Nathan turned away before he could change his mind. He didn't want to see her cry. Not yet. Not because of him. He saddled his horse slowly, each motion deliberate. The saddle creaked, the buckles clicked into place. His breath formed small clouds in the cold air. When everything was ready, he paused and whispered to his horse, "You've carried me through worse, old friend." One last ride. The animal snorted softly, almost as if it understood. Nathan swung into the saddle and took one final look at the ranch. The wind picked up, carrying the faint smell of rain. Somewhere deep inside, his heart cracked, not from fear, but from the weight of love. He knew this choice would make him the villain in everyone's eyes. But if it meant Heartland would survive, then he would bear that burden alone. He urged his horse forward, the hooves striking the dirt in a steady rhythm. The ranch faded behind him, swallowed by the night.by morning. He would be gone. And the letter he left behind would tell Amy the truth, or at least enough of it to keep her safe. Nathan didn't look back again. Some choices aren't made with courage, but with heartbreak. And as the first drops of rain began to fall, he whispered to himself, "Forgive me, Amy. This is the only way." Morning crept over Heartland like a secret trying to reveal itself. The first light touched the barn roof, the fields glistened with dew, and yet, something felt off. The usual rhythm of the ranch, the sounds of horses, the hum of life carried a strange stillness. Amy noticed it before anyone else. She came downstairs, her footsteps soft against the wooden floor, and spotted an envelope resting on the kitchen table. Her name was written on it in Nathan's handwriting. Her heart sank before she even opened it. The paper trembled in her hands as she unfolded the letter. The first line stole her breath, "I'm sorry." That was all it took for the world around her to blur. The words that followed were full of honesty, guilt, and love tangled together. Nathan had written about choices he could no longer hide, about a mistake that had come back for him. He didn't name who he was protecting, only that it was someone who didn't deserve the pain that was coming. And he ended with a single promise. "One day, you'll understand why I had to go." Amy sat there in silence, her eyes wet, the letter clutched tightly as if it might disappear. Jack walked in moments later, his brow furrowed when he saw her face. She handed him the letter without a word. He read it slowly, his expression hardening at first, then softening into quiet sorrow. He didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice was low. He thought he was doing the right thing. That boy's got a heart too big for his own good. Outside, the others began to realize Nathan's absence. His tools were neatly placed on the workbench, his jacket hanging by the door, but his horse was gone. The sight of the empty stalls sent a ripple through everyone. Amy stepped outside, the cold air biting at her cheeks. She looked out toward the distant hills, where the faint prints of hoof marks disappeared into the horizon. She wanted to be angry, but the truth was she understood. Nathan had always carried the weight of others. This time, he had carried it too far. The day moved on, but Heartland didn't feel the same. The laughter that usually echoed around the yard was replaced by quiet work and heavy thoughts. Amy walked to the barn later, the letter still folded in her pocket. She looked at Nathan's horse stall and whispered, "You didn't have to do this alone." Her voice broke at the end, and for a moment, she could almost hear his reply, calm, steady, full of love, telling her that everything would be okay. As evening fell, Jack stood on the porch, watching the sunset melt into the fields. Amy joined him, resting her head against his shoulder. The wind carried the scent of rain again, gentle and clean, as if washing away the pain of the day. "He'll come back," Amy said quietly, though she didn't know if she believed it. Jack nodded. "Maybe, but even if he doesn't, he's still part of this place. Heartland remembers the ones who loved it." The sky turned gold, and for a moment, peace returned. Nathan was gone, but his choice lingered in every shadow and whisper across the ranch. Somewhere out there, under the same fading light, he was riding toward redemption, hoping the family he left behind would one day forgive him. And as the camera fades on the sunset over Heartland, Amy's voice returns softly, a final narration. Sometimes the hardest goodbyes aren't forever. Sometimes they're just the beginning of something we don't yet understand. Days passed, but the air around Heartland still carried Nathan's silence. It wasn't just his absence that lingered, it was the space he'd left behind, filled with questions no one dared to ask aloud. The ranch moved on because it had to, yet everything seemed slightly off balance. Amy trained the horses like she always did, but every glance toward the ridge pulled her back to that morning. Jack kept himself busy fixing fences that didn't need fixing, pretending not to notice how often Amy drifted away in thought. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the fields shimmered in the last light, a stranger rode up the trail. Dust followed him like a shadow. He wore a dark coat and carried an envelope tucked into his saddlebag. Amy met him halfway, her heart quickening. The man's voice was rough from travel when he spoke. "You're Amy, right? Nathan told me if anything ever happened to him, I should bring this to you." The envelope was plain, sealed with the same careful handwriting. Amy's fingers hesitated before breaking it open. Inside, a short note read, "If you're reading this, it means I've made it far enough to keep you safe. Don't look for me. Not yet. There's something I have to finish first." Beneath the note was a photograph, an old one, worn at the edges, showing Nathan beside a man Amy didn't recognize. On the back were words that made her stomach twist. "Find him, and you'll understand everything." Jack joined her as she stood there, the wind tugging at the letter. "He's trying to fix something," she said quietly. Jack nodded, his eyes narrowing as he studied the photo. "Or someone's trying to stop him." The tone in his voice changed, a mix of pride and worry. Amy looked back toward the hills. The sky was fading again, the same golden hue that marked the day Nathan left. He's not running, she said softly. He's fighting for us in his own way. That night, Amy sat by her window, the letter spread across the table beside her. The lamp's light flickered as the wind brushed against the glass. She could almost feel Nathan's presence in the quiet, his calm steadiness, his stubborn heart. For the first time since he left, she didn't feel anger. She felt understanding. He hadn't vanished out of fear. He had done what he always did, protected the people he loved, even if it meant becoming the villain of the story. The next morning, Amy made a decision of her own. She folded the note and tucked it safely into her jacket. If he thinks I won't find him, she murmured with a faint smile, then he doesn't know me as well as he thinks. She saddled her horse and looked out toward the trail that disappeared into the trees. Jack watched from the porch, not stopping her, because he knew some journeys can be avoided. Only as Amy rode out, the wind picked up again, scattering leaves across the dirt path. The camera followed her until the ranch was nothing but a soft outline in the distance. Nathan's voice echoed faintly over the scene. A memory layered with hope and regret. Some choices change everything, Amy. But sometimes, they're the only way to make things right. The screen faded to black. Then, a faint message appeared. To be continued. Heartland Season 19. Episode 09. The Trail of Secrets. The road ahead stretched into endless wilderness, miles of forest, hills, and silence broken only by the wind brushing through the trees. Amy's horse moved steadily beneath her, hooves striking the earth with the rhythm of purpose. Every turn of the trail brought new questions. Every rustle in the woods felt like the echo of a man she could no longer see but still felt connected to. She wasn't chasing a ghost. She was following a promise, the one Nathan made when he left. The letter he sent still rested in her jacket, worn from being read too many times. The photograph haunted her thoughts. The stranger beside Nathan in that picture looked familiar now, something about his stance, the tilt of his head, the same determined look Nathan always carried. But Amy couldn't place him. What she did know was that whoever that man was, he held the truth that Nathan had risked everything to hide. The trail led her to an old, forgotten cabin deep in the foothills. The wood was cracked, vines creeping up its sides, but a faint curl of smoke rose from the chimney. Someone was there. Amy dismounted quietly, her boots crunching against the dry leaves. She pushed open the door, and for a second, the world seemed to stop. The man from the photograph stood before her, older now, rougher around the edges, but unmistakably the same. He didn't look surprised to see her. "You must be Amy," he said, his voice carrying the weight of old memories. "Nathan told me you'd find me eventually." Amy froze, her heart thudding. "Where is he?" she asked. The man sighed, looking away. "He's trying to end something he never should have been part of." His eyes met hers again. "You deserve to know the truth." He handed her a file, old papers, faded photographs, and one name written across the top in bold letters. Amy's eyes widened. It was a name tied to the very heart of Heartland's history, someone connected to the land, to her family. The pieces began to fall into place. Nathan hadn't just left to protect her. He'd left to protect the entire legacy of Heartland from being taken away. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "He's out there, fighting for us." The man nodded slowly. "But time's running out. If he fails, it won't just be his name that's lost, it'll be everything Heartland stands for." Amy stepped outside, the sun breaking through the clouds as if the world itself was urging her on. The wind caught her hair, and she felt something shift inside her, fear turning into determination. "Then I have to find him," she said, her voice steady. "I can't let him face this alone." The camera followed as she mounted her horse once more, the trail stretching out like destiny itself. The mountains loomed ahead, wild and unyielding, just like Nathan's heart. The screen faded to a wide shot of Amy riding toward the horizon, the sound of her horse echoing against the vast open land. A deep, calm voice, Nathan spoke softly over the wind. "Sometimes the truth is heavier than any lie, but love carries it further than fear ever could." The last frame lingered on the photograph, now resting on the cabin's table, with one line scribbled beneath it. "Heartland's greatest secret isn't about the land, it's about the people willing to protect it." As the music swells, the screen fades to black with the words, Next episode. The Reckoning begins. Heartland Season 19 Episode 10. The wind howled across the open valley as dusk settled over the land. The world around Heartland seemed caught between day and night, light and shadow, the same way Amy felt inside. Her heart pounded as she followed the mountain trail, every step of her horse carrying her closer to the truth and to Nathan. She didn't know what waited ahead, only that turning back was no longer an option. The photograph, the letters, the secrets, they had all led her here. This was the moment everything would finally make sense. The air grew colder as she neared an old logging site long abandoned by time. Broken fences leaned against fallen trees, and in the distance, the faint glow of a campfire flickered. Amy dismounted and approached quietly. The crackle of flames and the low murmur of voices reached her ears. Then she saw him, Nathan, standing on the other side of the fire, his face tired but resolute. He wasn't alone. Beside him stood the same man from the cabin, his expression grim, holding a file thick with papers that looked older than any of them. Nathan turned at the sound of her footsteps. For a second, neither of them spoke. The firelight painted their faces with shadows and gold. "You shouldn't have come," he said softly. His voice carried equal parts relief and fear. Amy's reply came steady and certain. "You knew I would." She stepped closer, eyes locked on his. "You've been running from something, Nathan. But whatever this is, you don't have to fight it alone anymore." Nathan looked down, the weight of months of secrets pressing against him. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. I made a deal years ago to save the ranch when things were falling apart. But that deal came with a cost. Someone's been trying to collect it." He gestured to the man beside him. "This is Daniel. He was part of it too. He's the reason I got that call." Daniel's voice broke the stillness. "We both made mistakes, but Nathan's the only one who tried to make it right. The papers in this file, they're proof. The land Heartland sits on, someone's been trying to claim it using forged titles. Nathan's been protecting the truth, keeping it out of the wrong hands." Amy's eyes widened. "So all of this, the leaving, the lies, it was to save Heartland?" Nathan nodded. "I couldn't let anyone take it. Not after everything your family built." His voice cracked on the last word. Amy took another step toward him. "You didn't have to do it alone," she whispered. The tension in the air began to shift. The truth was out, and with it came a strange calm. Nathan handed her the file, his hands shaking slightly. "Everything you need is in here. Take it to Jack. Once he knows, this fight is over." Amy took the file and looked back at him. "And you?" she asked quietly. Nathan smiled faintly, his eyes soft. "I'll come home when it's safe. When the name Heartland means what it used to again." The wind rose, scattering ashes from the fire into the dark. Amy turned to leave, but she looked back one last time. "You're not alone anymore, Nathan," she said. "You never were." Then she mounted her horse and rode back toward the ranch, the fire fading behind her until it was just a spark against the night dot as the camera followed her through the valley. Nathan's voice echoed once more, calm and filled with emotion. "Home isn't a place. It's the people who wait for you even when they don't understand why you had to leave." The screen faded to black. Then the final words appeared in quiet white letters. Heartland Season 19, the end of Part 1. To be continued. The return of Nathan.